Okay, so the sun is in my face again because it's really late again. I read a lot today, and again, it is this book. I think it's the eighth video now that I'm doing on this. It's a really thick book, and today I read so much. I took so much note. It's gonna be a long video, but let's start. So, continue with last time. So, this time he was going out of state to give speeches to broaden contact because he think he might enter the presidential race. He felt strongly that the country had to change direction. There are a few things. First of all, there's deficit and the government's competing with private borrowers for money and can't invest in education, training, and research. And then there's the import that caused loss of manufacturing jobs and farms. And then he feel he can't explain it to the American people. None of the people he think is competent wants to run. So he was like kind of thinking, should he run for president? But then he also had some doubt, which is he think he is young and didn't live long enough to have enough life experiences. Secondly, he isn't born wealthy, so he's not comfortable with hanging out around the circle of power. Also, the campaign would pose difficulties for his governorship, which in 1987, earlier as I talked about in the other video, that the deadline for implementing school standard is approaching, and then he feels it's the only chance most poor kids in his state had for a better future. It's the only chance they have. If it's like now or never, maybe like a long time after, there will be people who, but it will be so delayed. It's like really now or never to take action. So he quoted here his reflection. The ambition to be president has led many candidates to ignore both his own limitations and the responsibility of the office he currently holds. He's thinking really clearly and even like responsibly and a bit selflessly. And also, he wants to be there for his daughter, so he decided not to run. Around this time, President Bush invited them for a summit, and President Bush hand wrote him a note, thank him for working with his staff and saying that he wants to keep keep the education reform even if people are arguing and against it sometimes. But the big thing is the six goals from the summit, the six goals that they formed for the summit from the summit. It's very long, so I will post them like a few at a time instead of all at once. So first is by the year of 2000, all children in America will go to school. The second is by the year of 2000, high school graduation rate will increase by 90%. And then the third is by 2000, American students will leave grade 4, 8, and 12, demonstrate competency in challenging subjects including English, math, science, history, geography, and ensure students to use their minds, be prepared for responsible citizenship, further learning, and productive employment in our modern economy. I think this is a really good one. They're all important. And then the next one, next two, I will post them together. By the year 2000, U.S. student will be the first in the world in science and math. So they want to be the first in the world in science and math. And then in year 2000, every adult in America will be literate, possess knowledge and skills to compete in global economy and exercise rights and responsibility of citizenship. So that's the 4 and 5. And the sixth one is in year 2000, every school in America will be free from drugs, violence, and be disciplined to learn. So these are the six goals. And when I read them, I feel like, back then in like the 80s, people are so normal. Like these goals are true values. And I think what happened to America right now, like people are like, oh, people should choose their gender. I mean, do you have common sense to tell children you're not in the right gender? Like what kind of like teaching is that compared to back then, to promote being a good citizen, to be productive at employment, to learn, and to be the first in science, which like what is like a knowledge that can be applied to making technologies work, like, and then like to not have violence and drugs. If a kid is naturally born with a mind of the opposite gender, he will come out. You don't need to encourage them. So I really like these six goals that come up from the summit. And then there's the upcoming election of the governor. So people start to think Clinton has done a lot of good, but he was out of new ideas and out of time. 4 more years would give him too much control over all aspect of state government. So they are like kind of like just being calculating. I think that's not very nice, but anyways, that's just how people are. And they said they wanted to continue the direction he set in economy development, but were open to new ideas from a new leader. And then they even told him that and asked him to not run for the next election. And then this is what Clinton thinks. He thinks he couldn't bear walk away from a decade of hard work with his last year marked by repeated failures to fund further improvement in education. So he had kept on trying to improve education, and then it's like make or break moment that it's gonna have some result. He doesn't want to walk away from all of this hard work that builds all of these things. And then so he decided to run for a fifth term. In the campaign, organization called FLCO, it's spelled, I'll put the name up here. They refuse to endorse him because they think the sales tax increase is unfair to working people and blame him for failure of tax reform in 1988. But he was re-elected anyway, and after he was re-elected, he worked on the tax reform. So what he did is to give income tax credit to offset a sales tax increase for up to 75% of taxpayers. So he like listened to his shortcomings and then he improved on that. And then something happened. So the National Rifle Associations, there is a lobbyist. He was threatening him because the NRA, which is the National Rifle Association, has a bill to prohibit gun control. And Bill Clinton is for gun control. And there was this person threatening him, saying that, if you become president, he will beat his beat him up if he vetoed this bill. So if he is for gun control. And then Bill Clinton did veto the bill, so he did go against the bill and promotes gun control. And it's and then he is kind of considering to run for president because he didn't like to be threatened. And then afterwards, it's just like a lot of going back and forth. He had a good speech and he was encouraged to feel like maybe he can win the dominate nomination of presidency, president democratic nomination if he did run. And then there is people who says that if you run in 1996 you will win, but if you run in 1992 they will destroy him and destroy his political career and stuff like that. And then he was having doubt, but then he doesn't like to be threatened. And then his wife and his mom is rooting for him, saying that it's the time to run for president. And at the same time, he also expressed he liked the older Bush president more than Reagan. So, and then by 1991, he feel like he's ready to run for president. And then in 1991, October 3rd, he made his first speech to announce he's gonna run for president now. And the speech he said, including this sentence: preserving the American dream, restoring the hopes of the forgotten middle class, reclaiming the future for our children. And then when he gave the speech, he feel a fire lit in his heart. So the presidential campaign begins. It begins with a lot of interviews on his motive for everything, every detail. And there's the news war, the newspaper war. And then he also have to form a team, raise funds, and a lot of organizing, and spoke to different organizations. And there are people who wants to help. There's a lot of people who wants to help. So he sees that some states are high in welfare, in food stamps, and have a lot of bankruptcy, and he chose these states to start to promote himself there. He also have a lot of strong opponents. Some of the opponents have military background. Some is both conservative and liberal at the same time. And there are people who have authority in science and technology. And then there are candidates who's into fitness and then really good with fitness. And in 1990s, fitness is really big and people really like it. And then there's the first African American governor. So there's a lot of really strong opponents. And then Clinton says here, reflects here: first, people have to be able to look at you and imagine you as president. Then, you have to have enough money and support to become known. After that, it's a battle of ideas, message, and issues. And then, so, uh, there is the Democratic Leadership Council's core belief that Clinton helped write. So this is what he wrote: work and family, freedom and responsibility, give something back to the country, opportunity for all, special privileges for none. And then after people read it, they criticized them for being Republicans, which means that on the surface they're Democrats, but secretly they're Republicans. So the campaign continues. They hand out booklet. They went to host town meetings, where usually he talks for 15 minutes and then answers a lot of questions. And in one of the early town meetings, he asked the previous people who helped the previous campaigns, and then saying like, how many is like not embarrassing? How many people attend is unembarrassing? And they say 50. And then he's like, how many will be counted as successful? And they say 150. And then 400 people attended. So he feels pretty good about it. And then he also raised $3.3 million in early 1992. So he's off to a strong start. But then a woman last name is Flower, who he helped before, said he had an affair with Clinton. And it's an explosive force that's irresistible for the media. Cause him to drop in polls. And in one interview, people asked him if he and Hillary had arranged the marriage. And Clinton said, "You're looking at two people who love each other. This is not an arrangement or understanding. This is a marriage." And then Hillary, who sits next to him, said, "I love him and respect him and honor what he has been through. It's if that's not enough for people, then heck, don't vote for him." So, and then something happened, like something's gonna like drop on Clinton, no, drop on Hillary, and Clinton is able to protect her from being hit by that thing, and then everybody was really touched. And then, so because it was an accident, so accidents show true feelings, right? And then another big thing, Wall Street Journal ran a story on his draft experience. Remember back in the book and also in my video, I was and he wrote about, and I was saying, also summarizing that he avoided going to the Vietnam War by going on drafts, and now that's been dug out, and it's really bad for him. And and then his draft letter exposed, and the people who read the letter saying that anyone who actually reads it will think he's got character. But even though they said this good thing about him, his post still is dropping. And his friend helped him by attending interviews to promote him. And he still hosts events in hotels, but he is worried no one would come. He always shook hands with waiters and kitchen workers. A waiter told him this: "In Greece, we were poor, but we are free. Here, my boy can't play in the park alone or walk to school by himself because it's too dangerous. He's not free. If I vote for you, will you make him free?" And then this really motivates Clinton to become more committed, and then he also feel a little better. He feel that flower or the drafts is not the purpose of the election. The election is about people like this waiter that he talked to. It's these people that matters. And then back to campaign, there was debate, and he did well, and he won the Democrat primary, and that is it for this state, which is the state that have a lot of welfare and bankruptcy. And then he went to the next state and had more rallies and meet more connection. And then he went to the next state and have more debate and meet more people. And then Hillary was attacked for the Grand Gulf nuclear plant thing. like she was attacked earlier, and then remember last video or the video before, I don't remember, I was talking about it, and then she was also attacked as militant feminist lawyer, and Clinton felt really bad for her, but they won more Democrat primary, um and just as they thought they had nomination in bag, they lost one. And then there's the New York state, and he said that New York state isn't like any other state. There's a large Hispanic, Black, and Jewish American population, as well as a lot of Indians, Pakistanians, and Albanians, and just about any other ethnic group you can imagine. And there, he rides subway to meetings, and the press talk about it more than they talk about um, the meetings and the speech itself, because they feel like he's a country boy and riding subway, and it's like it stood out to them. And then he visited high schools, more meetings and more newspapers, and his friends stopped reading newspapers because they feel like they don't recognize the person on newspaper anymore because it's just a lot of fake news. Every day he is punctuated by television and print reporters shouting questions that questions his character. He seemed to have a very bad reputation. Cuban refugee crisis in the 1980s pops up again. And but in the end, he also won New York's Democratic primary. During this time, he has put on a lot of weight. He gained 30 pounds and is exhausted. But he also get to meet people he admire and team up with cool people he met. Sometimes he reunite with his family, and there are more rallies, more criticisms, and and then he flew to New York for Democratic convention. For the first time, finally, some polls shows he's in the lead. And then Clinton gives speech when it's his turn. So here's some quotes from his speech. In the name of the hard-working Americans who make up our forgotten middle class, I am a product of that middle class, and when I'm president, you will be forgotten no more. And then he says to children, don't let anybody tell you you can't become whatever you want to be. And then he laid out his plan for the future, for the country. In the end, he pointed out, we are too divided. It is time to heal America. And then he talked about how blessed he was to have his own family and wished to give every child a happy home. Afterwards, he started several bus tours since July 17. They were designed to go to small towns and rural areas that are never visited in modern presidential campaign. And over there, he gave speech sometimes even at 2 a.m. because they have to visit a lot of places. And but there are parts that are a bit more relaxing, and they are really excited for the bus tour. The Republicans also held their conventions in August. He and President Bush both appeared in another convention. It's different from the Republican convention, and President Bush is more popular, but there are a boost in morale. Um, when 30 high-tech leaders in traditionally Republican Silicon Valley has endorsed him instead of the Republican Party. Um, because Bill Clinton supported national technology, and a lot of high-tech executives agree with him and provided an enormous boost to the campaign by giving credibility to him claim to be pro-business. So it's like back and forth. And then in the convention, President Bush keep on bringing up Clinton raises taxes. Also, talk about how the draft situation. But then Clinton received endorsement from someone who's been in chairman of Joint Chief on staff. So it's like a little like combat, and then but then something really horrible happened. A person that's coordinating the Democratic Party effort with him dropped dead in hotel. Like how horrible is that? That happened in September. And then there was debate round after round. And to prepare for the debate, Clinton studies diligently and participates in several mock debate sessions. And over the debate, news issues were talked about, were debated about. For example, immigration, foreign policy, anti-trade war, pensions, social security. So they end up like talking about these things, and then President Bush like attack him on his citizenship because of his birth father, because his birth father died before he was born. There are things that dig out about him, and then they were like questioning him. And then there's the Moscow trip. Remember back then he went to visit Russia. During this time, he lost his voice, which is a big problem. So he saw a specialist and got a voice coach to help him talk normally again. But in the end of the debates, more Americans thought he had the ability to be a good president. Well, there's also a lot of negative ads from opponents. Then, during the last week, he campaigned as hard as he could, rallying every day, and so is President Bush. Bush directed all his paid media to fire at him. He had worked his heart out to convince American people that he was a risk worth taking. But he's facing constant shifting of polls that tells him people are not sure. Under all these doubts, he won. President Bush called him at election night to congratulate him and was gracious and promised him a smooth transition. And all these people who supported him are full of happiness and hope and with tears in their eyes. And that he went, and I read till here, so I'll read more about it. We are here at a good place to take a pause. So hope you enjoy the video.